She did something unexpected alone in the office, but her billionaire boss saw everything and couldn't look away. She thought she was alone, but late that night in the empty office she did something no one had ever seen her do, not knowing her billionaire boss was watching. Before we continue, if you enjoy touching and inspiring stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Now, let's get back to the story. Lila didn't know anyone was watching, and maybe that's why, for the first time since her life fell apart, she let go. It was nearly 9:30 p.m. The office was silent, swallowed in that eerie kind of stillness that only glass buildings get after hours. Lights dimmed, the hum of city traffic below a soft echo. Everyone had gone home hours ago, everyone except her. Lila, 27, temp assistant, the kind of employee you pass in the hallway and forget by the time you hit the elevator. Kind, quiet, always early, always last to leave. She didn't mind, or at least that's what she told herself. That night she was cleaning up the conference room after a long executive meeting. Empty coffee cups, paper folders, and plates with half-eaten croissants. Her hands moved on autopilot, but her heart was somewhere else. She plugged in her phone to the Bluetooth speaker just for a second and scrolled down to the old playlist she hadn't touched in years. Her thumb hovered over one title, Fly Me to the Moon, Ella Fitzgerald. Her grandmother used to sing it when she cooked. That warm, velvet voice drifting through their tiny apartment kitchen. That was before the world got complicated, before loss, before bills, before heartbreak. Lila hesitated. Then, quietly, she pressed play. The soft jazz chords filled the room like a whisper. She stood barefoot on the polished wood floor, shoes discarded beside her bag. Her blazer hung on the back of a chair. Her long hair, usually tied up in a strict bun, now fell loosely over her shoulders, eyes closed, arms slowly rising. She started to move, not perfectly, not like someone trained, but like someone who missed the feeling of being alive in her own skin. She twirled once, then again, laughing softly to herself. Like no one was watching, because no one was supposed to be. But just outside the glass wall, he stood. Grayson West, CEO, billionaire, the kind of man whose name came with its own gravitational pull. 32, sharp-featured, unreadable. Everyone feared him. No one really knew him. He had come back for a file he'd forgotten. Just one quick stop, he thought. No one would be there. But when he stepped off the elevator and heard music, something made him stop. Now he stood frozen at the door, briefcase in one hand, breath caught in his chest, watching the woman he'd barely noticed before. As she danced, like her heart remembered something the world had made her forget. And in that moment, something inside him cracked, not out of pity, not desire, but recognition. She looked so free, so honest, and Grayson couldn't look away. Then she turned. Her smile faded the moment her eyes locked onto his. Her body froze. The music kept playing, but the moment shattered. Lila's face flushed with panic. She stumbled back, reaching for the speaker to turn it off, tripping over a chair leg. The room fell back into silence. I didn't know anyone was here, she stammered, breathless, scrambling to pick up her shoes. I'm sorry, I was just cleaning. Just a song. It won't happen again. Grayson didn't move, didn't speak. For a long second, he just looked at her. Then finally he said, "You danced." Lila swallowed hard. "Yes, I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to." "No," he interrupted, not sharply, but softly, like the word surprised even him. "Don't apologize." She blinked, unsure if this was some kind of trick. He was known for being cold, ruthless, not gentle. "I should finish packing up," she said, fumbling with the coffee tray. But his voice cut through the silence again. "What was that song?" She paused. "Fly Me to the Moon. My grandmother used to sing it." Grayson nodded once. He seemed to be choosing his words carefully. "She had good taste," he said. Lila gave a faint, confused smile. Thanks. He walked into the room then, not toward her, but to the far side where the meeting files were left. She stepped aside, trying to become invisible again, but then he said something that stopped her cold. "You remind me of someone I used to know," he said, "before I forgot how to feel things." She turned to look at him. His eyes were on the window, watching the city lights. Lila didn't reply. What could she say to that? He grabbed the file and headed back toward the door. But just before leaving, he glanced back at her one more time. "Next time you dance," he said quietly, "I don't stop." Then he was gone. The room felt heavier without him, yet somehow lighter too. Lila stood there, shoes still in hand, heart thudding in her chest. Was that real? She looked at the door, half expecting him to return, but he didn't. Instead, she sat down slowly on the edge of the conference table. That one sentence kept repeating in her mind. Don't stop. The next morning, things went back to normal, at least on the surface. Lila typed reports, made copies, delivered coffee, just like always. She didn't see Grayson once that day, or the next. But then, on the third day, a message popped up on her screen from the executive office. "Mr. West would like to see you in his office, now." Her heart skipped. She stared at the message, unsure what to feel. Was she in trouble? Was this about the dance? With shaking hands, she stood up, straightened her blouse, and made her way to the 42nd floor. The elevator felt like it took hours, and when she stepped out, the quiet was unbearable. She knocked once. No answer. Then gently pushed the door open. Grayson was at his desk, staring at a photo in his hands. He looked up slowly. "Come in, Lila," he said. She entered, standing awkwardly by the door. "I got your message," she said carefully. He nodded and gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit, please." Her pulse quickened. What was this? He leaned back, folding his hands in front of him. "I want to ask you something," he said. She braced herself. "Would you join me for dinner tomorrow night?" She froze. The air in the room went still. "Oh, dinner?" she whispered. Grayson's eyes didn't waver. "Yes." She looked down at her lap. "I don't understand." "I think you do," he said gently, "and you can say no, but I hope you don't." Lila looked up at him. Something in his expression wasn't just curiosity. It was loneliness, raw, quiet, hidden behind a $1 million smile. She didn't answer right away. But in her heart, something had already started to change. Lila said yes, not because she was sure of anything, but because something in Grayson's eyes that day, something quiet, aching, and deeply human, made her feel seen for the first time in years. She'd spent most of her life fading into the background, but now it felt like someone was looking right at her, not past her, not through her, at her. The next 24 hours were a blur. She tried on every outfit she owned, none of which seemed right for dinner with a billionaire. Eventually, she settled on a simple dark green dress that had belonged to her mom. It wasn't fancy, but it made her feel like herself, and somehow that felt important. Grayson picked her up himself. No chauffeur, no black SUV, just him, behind the wheel of a quiet silver sedan, wearing a navy coat over a soft gray sweater, more like a man than a myth. "You look incredible," he said when she opened the door. Layla blushed. "Thanks. So do you. I mean, not incredible, just good. He laughed softly. "You can call me incredible. I'll allow it." The car ride was filled with quiet conversation. Not the small talk she expected, but real questions. What music she liked, what her childhood was like, why she always stayed late at the office. She told him the truth. "I don't really have anywhere to go," she said, "and the silence helps me think." Grayson nodded, understanding more than she expected. "Same," he said. "The quiet feels safer than the noise." They pulled up to a small restaurant tucked away on a quiet street. Candlelight flickered behind frosted glass windows. Nothing flashy, just warm. "This is my favorite place," Grayson said, holding the door for her. No one ever thinks to find me here." Inside, the hostess greeted him by name. "Mr. West, your usual table's ready," and led them to a private corner booth half hidden by plants and shelves lined with old books. It didn't feel like a billionaire's table. It felt like a secret. Dinner was slow, gentle. She ordered pasta. He ordered soup and bread. And somewhere between the first bite and the second glass of wine, the air between them softened. "You're not what I expected," she said without thinking. He looked up. "What did you expect?" "I don't know," she admitted. "Colder, scarier, like in the stories people tell at the office." Grayson smiled faintly. "Those stories aren't all wrong." "No?" she asked. He shook his head. "I am cold sometimes. I have been scary, but that's not all of me. People stop looking after a while. They only see the title." She stirred her pasta. "That's what it's like being invisible. Different version, same loneliness." Their eyes met, and for a second, neither of them looked away. Grayson leaned back. "Can I tell you something strange?" She nodded. "The night I saw you dance, I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. Not in a romantic way at first, just something about the way you moved. You were happy, not for anyone else, just for you." Lila swallowed. "That moment reminded me of something I forgot, something I used to be." They didn't speak for a few seconds. Then Lila whispered, "We lose pieces of ourselves, bit by bit. And one day we wake up and wonder where we went." Grayson nodded slowly. "I think I saw a piece of myself that night," he said, "and it was reflected in you." After dinner, they walked along the river. The city lights danced on the water. Their conversation grew softer. He told her about his brother, the one he lost in college. She told him about her grandmother, the one who raised her when her parents left. And somewhere in between stories and laughter, something began to bloom that neither of them dared to name. Not yet. When they reached her apartment building, she turned to him. "I had a good time," she said. "So did I," he replied. "More than I expected." They stood there in the soft glow of the streetlight. Neither moved. Then Grayson said something that broke the air between them. "Lila, this doesn't feel like just dinner." "No," she agreed, "it doesn't." He hesitated, as if on the edge of something, but then he stepped back. "I don't want to mess this up," he said. "So, let me take it slow." Lila nodded, heart racing. "Okay." They didn't kiss. But in that pause, in that almost, was something electric. She watched him walk away. And for the first time in a long time, she smiled like someone who remembered how. The next day at the office, things felt different, not officially, but underneath. She caught his eye across the floor once, just a second, and he looked away quickly, like someone hiding something precious. But the whispers started. "Did you hear? She had dinner with him? There's no way. She's just a temp, right?" By noon, the rumors had teeth. And by 3 p.m., Lila was called into HR. The room was gray, cold. A woman with a clipboard sat across from her. "Miss Carter, we've received word that you've had personal contact with Mr. West outside of business hours. Is this correct?" Lila's throat tightened. We had dinner. That's all." The woman scribbled something down. "There are policies about personal relationships within the company, even if temporary." Lila's stomach dropped. "Wait, am I being fired?" The woman didn't answer. Instead, she stood. "You'll receive an official notice by tomorrow." And just like that, the warmth from the night before turned to ice. Lila walked out, blinking back tears. She wanted to call him, to tell him what happened, but something stopped her. Maybe pride, maybe fear. She packed her things slowly that evening. Each folder felt heavier than the last. She was halfway out the door when she heard a voice behind her. "Lila?" She turned. Grayson stood in the hallway, his coat half-buttoned, eyes searching hers. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. I didn't want to be the reason things got complicated, she said. He walked toward her. You're not the complication, he said softly. You're the only part of this that makes sense. She looked down, but then he added something that made her heart catch. I won't let them do this to you. Lila shook her head. Grayson, I mean it, he said. I don't care what it costs. But just as the words left his mouth, a voice echoed from the elevator. Mr. West, the board is waiting. They both turned. His assistant stood stiffly watching them. Grayson hesitated, then whispered to Lila, Wait for me. She watched him walk away again, this time not by choice. And she was left with a single thought that wouldn't stop echoing. What if this was the beginning of the end? Grayson wasn't late to board meetings, ever. But that night, the clock hit 6:10 p.m., and the entire boardroom, 12 stone-faced directors and one anxious CFO, sat in stiff silence, waiting. Eyes darted between the door and their phones. Whispers floated about company losses, public perception, and policy violations. When Grayson finally walked in, he didn't apologize. He never did. But this time, he looked different. Not disheveled, not nervous, just heavier, as if he was carrying something he wasn't sure he could put down. Let's begin, he said, lowering himself into the head chair. But before the agenda even started, one of the older board members, a sharp-jawed man named Whitmore, cleared his throat. We'll get to the financials, Grayson, but first, we'd like to address the personal matter that's reached our attention. Grayson's eyes flicked up. Personal matter? You know exactly what I'm referring to. Another board member chimed in. Dinner with a junior assistant, whispers across every floor, HR complaints, and now, possible favoritism? Grayson leaned back in his chair, jaw tightening. I didn't break any rules, he said calmly. That's not the point, Whitmore replied. Perception is policy at your level. You, of all people, know that. There was a pause, a long, tight silence that filled every inch of the glass room. Then someone added quietly, It's her or the company's reputation, Grayson. You need to make a choice. He looked around the table. People he'd known for years, people who called themselves loyal, but only when things were quiet, safe. And in that moment, he realized something. These men and women would never understand what Lila meant to him, because they never really saw him either. I have made my choice, he said, standing slowly. You don't walk away from this kind of attention, Grayson, Whitmore said. You've spent 10 years building your legacy. Don't throw it away over a temp. Grayson turned to the window, staring down at the city lights below. For a moment, he didn't speak. Then, She's not just a temp, he said quietly. She's the first person in years who made me feel like I wasn't some corporate machine. Someone scoffed behind him. Another muttered, Sentimental won't keep us in business. Grayson turned, eyes like fire now. No, but integrity might. He pushed the chair back, grabbed his coat, and left the room without another word. Meanwhile, Lila waited in the small cafe across the street. Not because he told her to, but because a part of her heart, the part that still believed in people, couldn't walk away just yet. Her phone buzzed once, a message from her old roommate. Girl, are you seeing the company gossip page? They're saying you and Mr. West are a thing? She turned the phone over, face down. Her stomach twisted. This wasn't what she signed up for. She never wanted the attention, the whispers, the headlines. She just wanted to be seen for who she was. And with Grayson, she finally had been. But was that enough? The cafe door opened suddenly. She looked up, and there he was, still in his suit, tie loose, eyes locked on hers. He walked straight to her, no hesitation. Come with me, he said gently. Lila stood, heart pounding. Where? He didn't answer. 10 minutes later, they stood on the rooftop of the office building. The wind was sharp, pulling at her hair. Below them, the city buzzed, alive, indifferent. I used to come up here after long meetings, Grayson said. It was the only place I could breathe. She nodded. Why bring me here? He turned to face her. Because I don't want to hide anymore. She blinked. Grayson, I didn't plan this. I didn't expect you. But I know what I felt that night. Watching you dance like the world hadn't broken you. He stepped closer. And I know what I feel now. Lila looked down at the city, her voice barely above a whisper. They'll never stop talking about me, about us. I don't care. They'll say I used you. They already have. Then why are you still here? She asked, voice cracking. Grayson took her hand. Because you're the first thing in a long time that feels real. And I won't lose that because of fear. Lila swallowed the knot rising in her throat. She wanted to believe him. She really did. But before she could speak, her phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from HR. She opened it with trembling fingers, and her breath caught. Effective immediately. Your temporary position has been terminated. You are no longer permitted on company premises. Her eyes filled with tears. They fired me. Grayson stared at the screen, then at her. He clenched his fists. I'll fix this. Lila shook her head. Grayson, I can't be the reason you lose everything. This isn't your fight. He stepped closer, cupping her face gently. But maybe it should be. Then, for the first time, he kissed her. Soft, slow, like a promise. And for a second, the city disappeared. But that moment didn't last long, because just below them, on the street corner, a camera clicked. Flash. Someone had been watching. And in less than 12 hours, the world would see everything. By 9 a.m., Lila Carter's name was trending. Not for anything she said, not for anything she did in public, just for existing in a photo next to the wrong man. Or maybe the right man, depending on who was looking. Billionaire CEO Grayson West caught kissing temp assistant on rooftop. Office romance? Mystery woman identified in viral photo. Power and passion. What really happened between Grayson West and Lila Carter? It was everywhere. The office group chats, the gossip blogs, the news tickers on lobby TVs. Even her old college classmates started messaging, some pretending to check in, others not even hiding their curiosity, but none of it compared to the pain of what came next. Her landlord texted her, I saw the photo. If your name's going public, I can't afford trouble with the board. We'll need to talk about ending your lease early. Then a friend from her old job messaged, Lila, I wanted to recommend you for a role, but with your name in the press, they passed. It was like every door that had barely opened before slammed shut. And in the middle of all of it, Grayson. He had his PR team in a war room by 7 a.m. They printed the headlines, tracked the social media storm, calculated risks, brand equity, investor fallout. But none of them mentioned her. They talked about the company, the image, the damage. And finally, Grayson slammed his palm on the table. Stop, he snapped. She's not a liability, she's a person. Everyone went quiet. The lead publicist cleared her throat. With all due respect, sir, the world doesn't see her that way. They see a scandal. You're one of the youngest CEOs in the country. They don't want to believe someone like you could fall for someone like her. Grayson stood slowly. Then maybe they need to be reminded that I'm still human. He left the room without waiting for a response. Meanwhile, Lila was hiding. Not metaphorically, actually hiding. In her old neighborhood, in a corner bookstore where no one would recognize her. Curled up in an aisle between poetry and fiction, wearing a hoodie pulled tight around her face. She hadn't spoken to Grayson since the photo went viral. Not because she didn't want to, but because she didn't know how to handle being seen by millions when all she ever wanted was to not be seen at all. A soft voice pulled her out of her thoughts. Excuse me, are you Lila? She looked up. A woman, maybe in her 60s, stood in front of her. Kind eyes, a notebook in hand. Lila froze. I'm sorry. I'm not press, the woman said quickly. I just saw your photo, and I wanted to say thank you. Lila blinked. For what? The woman sat beside her on the floor, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. You looked happy, she said. You looked like a woman who'd forgotten the world. That reminded me of something I used to feel when I was young." Tears pricked Lila's eyes. No one had said that yet. Not once. "I'm sorry for the noise people are making out there," the woman said gently. "But don't let them drown out what you already know." Lila smiled faintly. For the first time that day, her heart steadied. That night, Grayson showed up at her door. No security, no cameras, just him, holding a paper bag of her favorite takeout. She let him in without a word. They sat on the floor of her tiny apartment, eating noodles straight from the box. "So," she said, "you survived the press." "Barely," he replied. "Some of the board wants me to do a public statement, claim it was a misunderstanding." She looked at him. "Are you going to?" "No." "Why not?" He set his box down and turned toward her. "Because I'm not ashamed of what I feel for you." Lila blinked, stunned. "Grayson." "I didn't plan this," he said. "I didn't even want this. But now that it's here, I won't lie to protect people who were never on my side to begin with." She looked away. "I've lost jobs. My apartment's next. I have nothing to fall back on. Grayson, this is your world. But I don't belong in it." He reached for her hand. "Then I'll build you a world that fits you." Her breath caught, but before either of them could speak again, there was a knock at the door. 3 loud bangs. They froze. Lila stood cautiously looking through the peephole. A man stood outside, mid-40s, expensive suit, sharp eyes. She opened the door a crack. "Lila Carter?" he asked. "Yes?" He handed her an envelope. "You've been served." She stared at the papers. "Lawsuit?" she whispered. The man nodded. "The board of West Tech is moving forward with a restraining order and formal legal action." He walked away. Grayson rushed to her side. He grabbed the envelope from her trembling hands. His jaw tightened as he read. "This is from them." "Why?" she asked, voice shaking. He looked up, furious. "Because they know they can't control me, so they're trying to destroy you." Lila felt the weight of the world crashing again. This was too much, too fast, too loud, and suddenly she said something she never imagined she'd say. "Maybe we should stop." Grayson looked at her, stunned. "Lila," she stepped back. "I didn't ask for this, and now people hate me for something I didn't even do. I won't let them. You can't protect me from everything." He reached for her, but she turned away, and in that moment, the world they had started building cracked. "I need time," she whispered, and she closed the door behind him. 3 days passed, no calls, no texts, just silence. Layla hadn't cried much the first night. She was too numb, too stunned. But by day 2, the quiet started to ache. By day 3, it felt like abandonment. But she couldn't bring herself to reach out, because she meant what she said. She needed time. Time to remember who she was before the whirlwind, before the rooftop kisses, and the headlines and the lawsuits. Time to breathe without being watched. But Grayson's absence hurt in a way she wasn't ready for. Every time her phone buzzed, her heart leapt, hoping it was him. And every time it wasn't, she sank a little deeper into that familiar place where she used to live. The background, unseen, unwanted, except she had been seen, and that made this silence feel even heavier. Meanwhile, Grayson was in a battle of his own. He sat in his penthouse office late into the night, surrounded by legal files, PR damage control, and advisors who spoke like robots. Withdraw the suit he'd ordered after the restraining order was filed. But Whitmore and the board refused. "If you want to keep your position, this has to go through," they'd said. "You crossed a line, Grayson." He paced, then stopped, then stared out the window again. He hadn't been sleeping, barely eating, and every time he closed his eyes, he saw her. Barefoot, dancing, laughing like nobody was watching. How did something so pure turn into this? It didn't make sense. He picked up his phone a dozen times, typed messages, deleted them. Because the truth was, he didn't know how to fix this without breaking something else. And deep down, he feared that maybe he was the one breaking her. Lila was sitting on the fire escape of her apartment building when a knock came at the door. She turned, heart quickening. but it wasn't him. It was her grandmother's neighbor from the building she used to live in as a kid. "Mrs. Carter told me you were nearby," he said, holding out a small brown box. "She asked me to give this to you." Lila took the box gently. "She's okay?" "She's still sharp as ever. Just said it was time you remembered something." He left with a soft smile, and Lila closed the door behind her. She sat on the floor and opened the box. Inside, a stack of old photographs, yellowed letters, and a folded napkin with her grandmother's handwriting. "Lila, love always finds its way back, but only if you don't slam every door on it." There was also a CD, her old childhood playlist, the one they used to dance to in the kitchen. She laughed through tears. She had almost forgotten who she was before the world convinced her to shrink, before she got used to staying quiet. That night she sat by the window, headphones on, playing track after track. Ella, Etta, Billy, and her favorite, the one Grayson had first seen her dance to, "Fly Me to the Moon." She remembered that feeling, that freedom. And suddenly, she didn't want to be afraid anymore. She didn't want to live her whole life playing small so others would feel comfortable. Not after everything. Not after him. The next morning, Grayson stood in front of the boardroom again. He didn't bring files. He didn't bring lawyers. Just a piece of paper in his hand. "This is my resignation letter," he said. Gasps. Whitmore leaned forward. "What are you doing?" Grayson looked each of them in the eye. "I built this company for 10 years, gave it everything. And the second I made a personal decision that didn't fit your narrative, you tried to erase the person I care about. Like she was a scandal to sweep under a rug." "You're emotional," one of them said. "This will pass." "No," Grayson said firmly. "What will pass is me giving up the parts of myself that matter." He dropped the letter on the table. "I'd rather walk away than spend another day hiding what makes me human." And with that, he walked out. Lila was working on her resume in a corner coffee shop when the news alert hit her phone. Breaking: CEO Grayson West steps down from West Tech in surprising move. Insider sources cite boardroom tension, ethics dispute. Her heart stopped. She read it again and again. Then, beneath the article, a comment, buried but clear. "Sometimes the right choice isn't the easy one. GW." She closed her laptop, stood, and ran. He was at the rooftop, same place, same view. She stepped out of the elevator, breathless. He turned, and the look on his face when he saw her. Like the world clicked back into place. She walked toward him, slowly, then faster, then all at once. And this time she kissed him. No hesitation, no second guessing, no more hiding. When they finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I walked away from everything," he whispered. "I know," she said, "and I'm not letting you walk away from me." They stood there, wrapped in a silence that wasn't lonely anymore. It was safe. Because love, the real kind, doesn't come with perfect timing or public approval. It comes when you least expect it and asks if you're brave enough to hold on. But just as the world quieted around them, Grayson's phone buzzed. He glanced down and frowned. "What is it?" Lila asked. He turned the screen to show her. A photo. Them together. Again. But this time from inside the office building. The angle was high, secret, and under it a single sentence. "Thought you should know, someone's been watching." Lila stared. Her chest tightened. "Grayson," she whispered, "this isn't over, is it?" He looked at her, jaw tense. "No," he said, "it's just beginning." The photo wasn't the problem. It was where it had been taken from. The angle was too high to be casual, too perfect to be a coincidence, and the timestamp, dated weeks ago, meant someone had been watching them long before their rooftop kiss went viral. Grayson studied the sender's ID. Blocked number. No name. Just the chilling words beneath the image. "You may have stepped down, but you're still mine to ruin." Lila stared at the message in his hand. the wind tugging at her hair as they stood together on the rooftop where everything had started. "Grayson," she whispered, "what does this mean?" He clenched his jaw, thinking hard. "It means this wasn't about us." She turned to him, confused. "What are you talking about?" He looked at her, a storm in his eyes. "They didn't come after you because you were a temp," he said slowly. "They came after you because I made enemies in that boardroom, people who've wanted me gone for years. And now that you're out, they want to make sure I stay out," he said. "And taking you down too? That's just revenge." Lila swallowed hard. "But I don't even matter to them." Grayson shook his head. "That's where they're wrong." The next morning, Lila received a call from a private number. She hesitated, then picked up. "Miss Carter?" said a low voice on the other end. "You don't know me, but I used to work in compliance at West Tech. I was pushed out last year." "Okay, why are you calling me?" "Because I saw your photo, and I think I know who's behind all this." Lila sat down, her fingers gripping the phone tighter. The man continued. "There's a backdoor system. Someone's been using the internal surveillance archives, not just for monitoring, but for manipulation. You were never supposed to see that rooftop camera." "Who would do that?" There was a long pause. Then the name dropped like a bomb. Whitmore. Her breath caught. The board member who'd warned Grayson. "He's been building a case to discredit Grayson for over a year. You just got caught in the crossfire." Lila's heart raced. "Can you prove this?" "I couldn't. That's why they got rid of me." He hesitated, then added, "But I kept records, screenshots, timestamps, maybe enough to show the truth." "Then send them," she said, her voice steady. "It's time someone did the right thing." An hour later, she stood outside Grayson's apartment, laptop in hand, wind-blowing pages of printed screenshots around her like leaves. He opened the door and saw the fire in her eyes. "You were right," she said. "They've been watching you for months. This was never about policy. This was a takedown." Grayson stepped aside, letting her in. They spread the evidence across his dining table. Images, logs, video access data. It was all there. Whitmore's digital fingerprints everywhere. Grayson shook his head, stunned. "This man chaired my father's funeral," he muttered, "and he's been playing chess with my life ever since." Lila stood behind him. "What are we going to do?" He looked up slowly. "We're going to fight back." By noon, Grayson made a call to someone he hadn't spoken to in years. Kara Lynn, investigative journalist, former friend. Once shut out for publishing a story that cost the company a deal, but never backed down from telling the truth. "You're calling me now?" she said, skeptical. "After what your team did to me?" "I was wrong," Grayson said, "and I have something I think you'll want." He sent over the folder. There was silence for almost a minute. Then, "Meet me in 2 hours, bring her too." The cafe Kara chose was small, hidden, and loud enough to drown conversation. Lila sat next to Grayson, watching the woman across from them scroll through the evidence with sharp eyes. When she looked up, her expression had changed. "This is enough to blow up half the boardroom?" Grayson nodded. "That's the idea." Kara raised an eyebrow. "You sure you're ready for this?" He didn't even blink. "I stepped down to protect what matters. I'm not going to stay quiet while they burn what's left." She tapped the table once. "I'll write it, but not like a hit piece. I'm going to tell the whole story." Lila tensed. "Including me?" Kara met her gaze gently. "Only if you want to be heard." Lila hesitated. All her life, she'd stayed in the shadows. But something had changed. She'd found her voice again. And this time, she wasn't going to let fear take it back. "Tell it all," she said. "Just tell the truth." The article dropped 48 hours later. Billionaire love story or boardroom betrayal? The real story behind Grayson West's resignation. It was bold, honest, raw. It told the truth about the board's manipulation, about the surveillance breach, about how they weaponized a private moment to serve a public agenda. And it told the story of a woman who dared to dance and the man who chose love over power. The article spread like wildfire. Support poured in from former employees, shareholders, even complete strangers. Some called it foolish. Most called it brave. 1 week later, Lila was invited back to the building she once left in tears, but not through the back door. This time she walked through the front lobby, shoulders back, head high, and standing at the top of the stairs waiting for her was Grayson. He held out his hand, and the moment she took it, the entire building seemed to pause. This wasn't just a reunion, it was a reckoning. But just as they began to feel the weight lift, just as the world began to right itself, Kara called again. "There's something you need to see," she said, voice tense. Lila and Grayson met her that evening at her office. She pulled up a final file. "This wasn't in the archive you gave me. It was buried deep, almost erased." She pressed play, and a silent video appeared. It was from before the rooftop photo. Inside the boardroom, Whitmore talking on the phone, laughing. Then, "Don't worry, I've already set the trap. He'll fall and she'll fall with him." The video ended. Lila looked at Grayson. Grayson looked at Kara. The truth wasn't just ugly. It was intentional. Lila's hands shook. "They planned this," she whispered. Grayson's voice dropped. "And now, we bring it all down." The board didn't expect them to show up. Not together, not confident. But there they were, Grayson West and Lila Carter, standing side by side in the marble lobby of the West Tech building as whispers echoed from every corner. Grayson wore no tie. Lila wore no fear. They weren't there to ask for approval. They were there to end a lie. Upstairs, a special meeting had been called after the article blew up. Shareholders demanding answers, legal teams panicking, reporters circling like birds. Carolyn's story had gone viral, and the once untouchable board was now under fire. But the final blow was still to come, because Grayson had something no one expected: the recording. He walked into the boardroom calmly. Lila followed, her gaze steady. Whitmore was already there, trying to appear composed, but his fingers twitched at the sight of them. "You shouldn't be here," Whitmore said coldly. "Neither should you," Grayson replied, placing a small USB on the conference table. He turned to the room full of suits. Once his colleagues, now just men hiding behind polished lies. "This is the real story," he said. "One of you planned a smear campaign, violated company privacy laws, used surveillance footage to manipulate shareholders, and targeted someone who never asked for anything except honesty." He nodded to Lila. She had more integrity in her little finger than anyone sitting at this table. Whitmore tried to cut in. "This is absurd. There's no—" Grayson pressed play. The room went silent as Whitmore's voice played over the speakers. "I've already set the trap. He'll fall, and she'll fall with him." When the audio stopped, no one moved, not even Whitmore. He stood slowly, trying to recover. "This proves nothing. It could be doctored." "It's not," said a voice at the door. Kara Lynn, backed by a digital forensics expert ready to testify. And just like that, the truth could no longer be buried. In the days that followed, Whitmore resigned in disgrace. Other board members stepped down quietly, hoping to escape the storm. An investigation was launched into corporate surveillance abuse. Compliance teams were rebuilt from scratch. Former employees began speaking up about years of silence and control. But Lila? She finally got her voice back. She declined interviews, ignored sponsorship offers, politely turned down podcast invites. Instead, she danced. At a fundraiser for women's shelters, barefoot, to fly me to the moon, no cameras, or no headlines, just her. And Grayson, he didn't go back to West Tech. He started something new, a venture fund for underrepresented entrepreneurs. No boardroom games, no glass towers, just people with stories worth believing in. And at every event, every launch, every meeting, Lila was beside him. Not as a symbol, not as a headline, but as the person who reminded him what being human really meant. One night, months later, they stood on a beach at sunset. No suits, no heels, just waves, wind, and the soft hush of a world that had finally quieted around them. Grayson looked at her, eyes soft. "Do you regret it?" she smiled. "Not for a second." He nodded. "Me neither." He took her hand. "Funny how it started with a dance," he said. "No," she whispered. "It started when someone chose to see me." He leaned in, pressing his forehead to hers. And in that moment there was no past, no press, no boardroom. Just love, simple, unbreakable, earned. And as the stars came out over the water, one question lingered in the air. What would you do if someone tried to tear down the best thing that ever happened to you? Would you hide, walk away, or hold on, even when the world told you not to? The end. Have you ever been overlooked until someone truly saw you or stood up for love, even when it cost you something? Share your story in the comments. Someone out there might need to hear it.